I'm Robert Cassard, GuitarDiscoveries.com. As always, I learn the hard way so you don't have to. So I've been doing a series about what each of my favorite singer-songwriters taught me. And so far, I've honored James Taylor, Cat Stevens, and Jimmy Buffett. Now, because I'm a singer-songwriter myself, and because I came of age in the 1970s, I've got other artists I want to add to this series over time, and today is all about Jim Croce. Now, I haven't heard a lot of Croce music these days, so I was assuming he's overlooked or forgotten until I checked the stats. Right now, he has over 10 million monthly listeners on Spotify. That's over 1 million more than Cat Stevens, more than double James Taylor. I mean, wow. Clearly, Jim brought something different to the singer-songwriter movement of the early 70s that people still love and listen to. So stick around as I share the 3 most important things Jim Croce taught me and why his music still matters today. All right, real quick before I dive in, please click the like button. Make sure you're subscribed. Definitely leave a comment to tell me what Jim's music means to you, and so more people will find these videos that I spend ridiculous amounts of time working on. I do appreciate it. All right, James Joseph Croce, born January 10, 1943. An Italian-American kid born in South Philly and raised just a few miles west of there. Now, his bio describes him as an American folk and rock singer-songwriter who released 5 studio albums and numerous singles between 1966 and 73. So that sounds like an 8-year career. And technically it was, but the first 6 of those 8 years, Jim was largely unknown. I mean, truly a struggling musician. So his first solo album, called Facets, came out in 1966. It was self-produced and released. Pretty obvious if you give it a listen. But the story goes that Jim's parents financed the album by giving a $500 wedding gift to him and his new wife, the former Ingrid Jacobson. And they specified the money had to be spent to make an album. Now, apparently, they hoped it would flop, so Jim would give up music for a more sensible career in psychology, which he'd studied at Villanova University. So, $500, he managed to press 500 copies. Now, I totally relate because my first singer-songwriter album, called Over the Line, was a similar story, right? Self-produced with my friend Randall Albert, financed with the help of my father, who expected every penny paid back, and may have secretly hoped that my album would flop too and teach me a lesson about the long shot music biz. But guess what? Jim sold every copy in about a week. So it was a small scale success, right? Enough to keep him going in music. Randall and I had 1,000 copies to sell, and at that time we were at the University of Michigan. I was playing in restaurants and bars and even opening for some big name artists. And that constant gigging helped sell a few hundred LPs pretty quickly. So within a few months, we'd paid my dad back with interest, to his obvious surprise. Okay, back to Jim. 1968, he and Ingrid moved to New York City. And they have a friend who's a record producer, fellow Villanova alumnus Tommy West. And he helps get Jim and Ingrid signed to Capitol Records. And they record an album called Jim and Ingrid Croce. Now it's just called Croce. It's kind of a cross between Ian and Sylvia and Peter, Paul, and Mary, very folky. So they spend a couple years trying to promote the album, but eventually their whole duo experience just kind of goes bust. I mean, they're forced to sell all but one guitar just to pay their New York rent. So they move out of the city back to rural Pennsylvania, where mostly Jim keeps performing locally. But he has to take odd jobs, and that includes truck driving and construction work and welding, etc. Now, in hindsight, we know Jim will eventually take all that struggling to make ends meet and all the interesting characters he met along the way, and he's going to turn them into great characters in his story songs. But at the time, he's just struggling, right? So now it's 1970. On the Croce career timeline, we're already 4 years into that 8-year career. Right? He's got 2 LPs out, but no traction. Time marches on, and the Croces move back home to Philadelphia. Jim gets a job at a radio station. He's not a DJ. He's actually rewriting advertising copy to make it hipper and more groovy. So he's very much on the fringe of the music business. Until another college friend, Joel Salviolo, steps in. Now, Joe has been teaching in New Jersey, and he's discovered a talented guitarist and singer-songwriter named Maury Muehleisen. Producer Joe becomes a yenta. He gets Jim and Maury together. Fateful introduction because sparks fly, and Jim and Maury are like musical soulmates, right? Maury's just releasing his first album, and he loves it when Jim backs him up. So Jim gets back in the music business as Maury's backup singer and guitarist, right? And all that while, Jim keeps writing original songs. Okay, fast forward another year, 71. Cashman and West have helped Jim record an 8-song demo, and they're shopping it around. And by this time, Jim's got a backlog of originals, right? So Polygram in the Netherlands likes the demo enough to finance recording a full LP, 12 tracks, that are going to become Jim's third official album called You Don't Mess Around with Jim. So Cashman and West produce it at the Hit Factory in New York. The budget is just $18,000, low for that time because it has to pay for all the studio time and all the musicians. But now they have a complete LP, finished, sounding great. So it should take no imagination for any A&R person to hear the potential and understand the magic of Jim Croce, right? But he's kind of an ordinary guy, right? Not the typical model perfect rock star. So get this, the finished album gets shopped around and rejected by label after label after label. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 companies say no to a finished LP by Jim Croce. And then finally, a promoter at ABC Records, a guy named Marty Cupps, hears the album on a cassette, loves it, and tells the label head, Jay Lasker, sign this guy. As a promoter, Cupps knows the songs are going to sell themselves, right? So finally, it's early 72, Jim signs a 3-album deal with ABC Records. Now he's in his late 20s. He's well into year 6 of his 8-year music career by this time. And that is the segue to Jim Croce lesson number 1, tell a good story. Now I remember the first time I heard Jim Croce, summer of 72. I'm on the beach at Lake Michigan with my mom and dad, and over the radio I hear this fun song, pretty much a straight blues, but with kind of a tight acoustic thumb and really tasty acoustic lead guitar. And by the time it gets to the chorus, I'm turning it up and I hear the words, you don't tug on Superman's cape, you don't spit into the wind, you don't pull the mask off the old Lone Ranger, and you don't mess around with Jim. Doo-doo-dee-da-dee-dee-dee-dee. I'm like, wow. Even as a preteen, I know that is some brilliant songwriting. My mom even loved it. She used to say, that Jim Croce is so clever. So by the end of the song, Big Jim's been taken down by the pool shooting boy named Willie McCoy, aka Slim. So it's this story told in a clever way with a surprise twist ending. And it very quickly rose into the top 20. Now what I didn't know was that Jim Croce had a lot more stories to tell in his songs. And his way of telling a story was making ordinary people larger than life. Think of his other story song characters like Rapid Roy, that stock car boy.
And it's Rapid Roy, that stock car boy. He eat too much to eat. He always got an extra pack of cigarettes rolled up in his t-shirt sleeve.
Bad Leroy Brown.
That is bad Leroy Brown, the baddest man in the whole damn town, better than old King Kong, and meaner than a junkyard dog.
And then there are some that he wrote in first person, like Speedball Tucker. There's the guy who fell in love with a roller derby queen.
I fell in love with a roller derby queen. Around and round, all round and round. The meanest honky woman that anybody ever seen.
And of course, the hapless deadbeat dad of Working at the Car Wash Blues. One of my favorites. So back to You Don't Mess Around with Jim. The next single came out in October and also made the top 20. And it showed off Jim's softer, more vulnerable side. And it really grabbed me and inspired me to buy the album. I'm talking about Operator. Subtitle, That's Not the Way It Feels. Pretty much everyone knows this song and story. It's a dialogue with a telephone operator helping Jim make a call to his former girlfriend, now living in LA with his best old ex-friend Ray. And by the end, Jim's conversation with the operator has been like a therapy session, right? Forget about this call, you can keep the dime. It's those little details that humanize his songs and make them so memorable and lovable. And of course, there's another key reason Operator was such an ear grabber, and it's a perfect example of Croce lesson number 2, share the glory. So in the case of Operator, sharing the glory meant collaborating and sharing the spotlight with Jim's musical partner and alter ego, Maury Muehleisen. And I've talked about this in other videos, the magic that happens when two acoustic guitar players work together, playing complementary parts. You know, it's generally thought of as rhythm and lead. Duos like Cat Stevens on rhythm guitar with Alan Davies on lead, or Gordon Lightfoot on rhythm and Red Shea on lead, or John Denver on rhythm and Mike Taylor on lead. But for my taste, Croce and Muehleisen might just be the best duo of all. So Jim fingerpicks the Operator rhythm part, playing first position chords in the key of G, just like this. And then Maury plays that unforgettable double stop lead part. Now, he's playing with a capo at the 5th fret, so he's using D hand positions to play in the key of G along with Jim. I mean, that second guitar is so core to the song and arrangement. Kind of reminds me of the guitar part on Van Morrison's Brown Eyed Girl, you know? That's usually credited to Hugh McCracken. You just can't separate the song from that lead guitar. And that is true of many Croce songs. So Croce and Muehleisen make everything sound easy and laid back. But when you try to play their parts, either rhythm or lead, it's obvious how talented both of these guys were. I mean, both were accomplished guitarists with lots of subtlety in their parts. So on Operator, I hear Maury's guitar fills as responses. They're almost like the operator's side of the conversation. I mean, it's such a brilliant song and a brilliant way to arrange it. Okay, but why is this Croce lesson share the glory? Most people don't realize that Cashman and West first invested their time and money into Maury Muehleisen, not Jim Croce. They actually produced and released Maury's only album called Gingerbread. It came out on Capitol Records in 1970. And after meeting with Jim, Maury hired him to play backup guitar and sing harmonies. And they spent 18 months performing as a duo, promoting Maury's album. That's actually how Jim got back into music and how he spent most of 1970 and 71. And the sophistication of Maury's songs influenced Jim's songwriting too. So there was a true synergy between these guys. Both of them were so mutually admiring and supportive that they unconditionally agreed to go wherever their individual or combined success would lead. So Jim happily backed up Maury for that year and a half. And then once Jim's star began to rise, Maury happily backed up Jim for what also turned out to be 18 months. They toured all over as a simple duo, 2 guitars, 2 voices, truly a 50-50 collaboration, and wow, how much they packed into a year and a half. You Don't Mess Around with Jim spawned 2 hit singles at the time, and then just 9 months later, January of '73, Jim releases album number 4, Life and Times, and he gets nominated for 2 Grammys. Now, the album opener and first single was One Less Set of Footsteps. And of course, Jim plays strummed rhythm, straight ahead, key of C. We've been running away from something we both know. We've long run out of things to say, and I think I'd better go. So don't be getting excited when you hear that slamming door. There'll be one less set of footsteps on your floor. So it's a great song as is, but then Maury adds his famous companion lead part. We've been running away from something we both know. We long run out of things to say, and I think I'd better go. It's just so perfect, right? And the way it's mixed really features the lead guitar right up front with the vocals. Plus, Maury's part is double tracked. And that means that during recording, Maury played everything the same way twice, including the solo. So it's not improvised, right? His part is composed, you might say. So it's really part of the song, and he played the same part when they performed live.
Footsteps on your
All right, Life and Time's second single was a smash hit, Bad Bad Leroy Brown. I mean, that song was everywhere in '73 and really throughout the '70s. I played in a jazz rock trio, and we got constant requests for Bad Bad Leroy Brown pretty much every gig. I mean, bars, restaurants, weddings, bar mitzvahs, corporate parties, country club events, everyone wanted Bad Bad Leroy Brown. And without fail, the first few chords of the song, everyone jumped to their feet to dance. So it's a pretty basic song, a simple modified blues and just verses and choruses, no bridge. But another great story. Well, the south side of Chicago, in the baddest part of town. And if you go down there, you better just beware of a man named Leroy Brown. So only 6 months after Life and Times, summer '73, in between tour stops, Jim and Maury are already recording another LP, I Got a Name, and it'll be Jim's 5th and final studio album. Because tragically, everything will literally come crashing down on September 20, 1973. It's when their private tour plane crashed in Louisiana, and it took the lives of Jim and Maury, the pilot, their manager and booking agent, their road manager, and a comedian named George Stevens. So I was 12 years old at the time, big fan, in the thick of learning guitar, starting to write my own songs, and playing and studying Croce tunes and lyrics, and Maury's lead lines. So the news was just a gut punch. Jim and Maury both gone. It did seem karmic that the lead single, I Got a Name, was scheduled for release the day after the plane crash. And because of all that publicity surrounding Jim's death, I wasn't surprised when the song made the top 10 quickly. Now, ironically, it's one of the few songs Jim didn't write. It was written by Gimbel and Fox. But Jim loved it and recorded it to honor his father. He had said his father had a dream for him, but died before his first success. Now, speaking of fathers, one of Jim and Ingrid's legacies is their son, A.J. Croce, born in '71. He's alive and well. Carries on Jim's tradition as a singer-songwriter. He's already 10 albums into his career. And he has a kind of unique, swampy southern style.
You see me and you just might ask.
But sometimes he plays his dad's songs live. I mean, recently he's done these 50th anniversary Croce Plays Croce concerts where he sings about 20 of Jim's songs. All right, finally, Jim Croce, lesson number 3, balance the hard with the soft. So Jim explored working class personas in the blues-based story songs I've been talking about, but a lot of Jim's best love songs are his softer songs and his ballads. And after he died, his star rose higher than ever on the strength of 2 ballads that ultimately became classics. It was the re-release of Time in a Bottle as a single just a few weeks after he died that became a #1 hit. And then early in '74, I'll Have to Say I Love You in a Song also reached the top 10. I mean, it's another beautiful example of Croce rhythm guitar and Muehleisen lead. So Jim plays the rhythm part that goes like this. And then Maury's companion part is so delicate and interesting. So it's played with a capo at the 7th fret. So simple and beautiful. Like other Croce songs, there's no bridge, but it has an instrumental verse with one of my favorite acoustic guitar solos. It's 8 bars of simple, expressive perfection. It's actually played on a nylon string guitar, but I'll give it a go here. So the first time I heard this song and those intricate guitar parts, I actually got emotional because I knew Jim and Maury were gone and that we'd never get to hear more of their unique acoustic interplay. I remember thinking that, like me, everyone was realizing how much we'd lost in that crash. Because there were a few weeks in 1974 when the LPs You Don't Mess Around with Jim and I Got a Name held the #1 and #2 chart positions. So major success came late in Jim's life, year 7 of his 8-year career, and his biggest success came when his life was already over. Okay, quick recap. 3 things Jim Croce taught me. Lesson 1, tell a good story. Take the time to craft your lyrics into a compelling tale because a good story sells itself. Jim just bent the blues a little to write his tough guy story songs, and people loved him. Remember, songs like You Don't Mess Around with Jim and Bad Bad Leroy Brown are just verses and choruses, no bridges or middle eights needed. Croce lesson 2, share the glory. A truly equal musical collaboration like the one Jim had with Maury Muehleisen is pure magic, right? 2 voices, 2 guitars, and the sum was always greater than their individual talents. And then lesson 3, balance the hard and soft. Jim's tough guy story songs grabbed people's attention, but then his ballads became his biggest hits. All right, thanks Jim and Maury for sticking with music despite the struggles and for making those 3 great LPs in just 18 months. All right, before you go, remember to click like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Leave a comment about what Jim's music means to you and tell me who else I should feature in upcoming videos. And please share this video with other Croce fans. I also hope you'll take time to visit guitardiscoveries.com. Totally free, and you'll find hundreds of videos about guitar, singing, songwriting, your favorite musical artists, and other music topics. See you next time, hopefully right now.